You're supposed to ask if I'm happy in my marriage.
Even when we're getting together, we're not often talking about how to be better dad or husband.
Yeah, in Elder's Quorum, we don't even talk about it.
What can I provide and give here versus like, what can I get out of this? And those mentalities have stark differences.
You're putting faith in me that I'm going to be the mother you would like to have for your children, just like I'm putting the faith in you that you're going to be the provider that I would like to have for my children.
It doesn't really matter how many certificates you have on the wall in this situation.
How long has Peterson been around? I mean, it's probably pushing 10 years. Peterson's been around for maybe 7 years. And I don't think he started it, but he definitely landed in the right place at the right time to encourage a lot of responsible thought. And then that thought took root in a lot of young men. And so all of a sudden, a lot of young men are thinking to themselves, I can be a responsible adult, and that can actually be an amazing, fun thing. And again, it's not a new thought. It didn't start with Peterson, but for some reason he was able to communicate it in a way that young men took hold of it. And I think a lot of young men were just kind of ready for that message as well. But the message comes across as very kind of sanitary in my view. It aims at a higher self, but there's really no goal other than just to be your best self and to take full responsibility for all the different facets of your life and what is your maximum potential and how can you reach your maximum potential. And there's lots of other people that have done this over the years and popularized it to some degree or another. And there's some that are kind of dark, like money's the most important thing. The more money you have, the more of a man you are. And then there are some that are really just kind of thoughtful, write down your goals and then see what step you can take towards your goal today. And your goal could be anything. Your goal could be a career. It could be a relationship. It could be some kind of like struggle that you have with mental illness or something. So one of the things that I think has been missing, and this is where you can correct me if you have any examples, I think a direct encouragement for young men to aim at fatherhood and husbandhood is lacking. I think that the people like Peterson and Tate, and there's a whole bunch of them, but like all these guys that have a bunch of young men as their audience, they don't really sit down and say, aim at fatherhood or aim at being a good husband. And what does that look like right now? Like if you're 15 or 20 or 30 and you're not those things, what can you do now to prepare for that? I don't hear that message. Have you noticed that, or do you see that message coming across anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. But I'm not like dabbling in all these podcasts and all these YouTube channels. And, well, maybe that's actually what I am doing. I dabble here and there, but I don't scour the internet for all kinds of sources. So,
you're not a connoisseur.
But yeah, I certainly check out the news, and I feel like I've probably got a good sense of the main thread. And yeah, I don't hear people say, let's focus on fatherhood and husbandhood. And so yeah, I think you're probably right.
The one exception that might be an exception is The Art of Manliness. Do you remember that podcast? I haven't looked it up in a while. The latest, Should You Go to Bed Angry, from September 10th. So yeah, from today, from Brett McKay. So it's still the same guy. And he's on podcast 1084. And it's titled Overdiagnosed, How Our Obsession with Medical Testing and Labels is Making Us Sicker. So yeah, he's still going. Okay, so yeah, he's probably the closest that I can think of to someone who aims at all the different facets of manliness, including being a husband and father, and at times gets specific.
Yeah, but I think and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think your point is like there's not a lot of density on that subject, and I would agree with. I'm never hearing that outside of religious circles. I'm not hearing It's not that I'm never hearing it. I'm rarely hearing it. It's like society at large is aiming at different things than fatherhood and husbandhood, you know?
YouTube is majority male audience. And if I search how to be a father, I've got Peterson advice, 5 minutes, Peterson and Lex advice, 6 minutes, and then a bunch of shorts of all different kinds. 10 ways to be a better dad, 5 minutes, 400,000 views. The essence of being a good father, Peterson, and then Nick. I recognize some of these characters. I just don't know them very well. And then that's it. So once I get about 5 videos deep, it goes to other things that are not how to be a good dad.
Yeah, right.
At least
And
at least by popular figures. After that, there's dad videos, but they're like, the random psychology channel puts out a little episode on dads and then moves on, right? Like there's no channels that are dedicated to being good dads. There are dad channels. I don't know if you've seen some of the dad channels of like basically funny dad jokes, dad moments, like super dad videos, stuff like that.
nice.
But there's no how to dad videos or how to husband videos. Let me try husband real quick. I did father. Let me do husband.
Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of feel like, yeah, you're already, it's hard to find stuff. And I think that tells you you're on YouTube. It's hard to find stuff, which tells you there's probably a couple hundred subjects that are significantly higher on the popularity list in YouTube. Like if you look up how to start a business, you're going to get a tons with millions of views, or
Yeah.
even how to travel, right? There's all these people that are so fascinated by travel and how to do it efficiently and how to gain that.
Fitness
Would be huge. Yeah, you can just kind of think about what society at large worships. And it's not bad things. Like fitness is great. It's so good for your health. But yeah, it's hard to find things on fatherhood, husbandhood.
That's an interesting way to think about it, though. Like maybe the problem is that the audience is not seeking it, not that we're not providing it. Like if we provided a bunch of content, would the audience just wouldn't be there, or would the audience be like, "Finally, I've been looking for this"?
Yeah, even in my circles, which are pretty, conservative, moderate, religious, LDS, even when we're getting together, it's not like we're not often talking about how to be better dad or husband.
Yeah, in Elders Quorum, we don't even talk about it.
Yeah, it's not often, and and I look at myself in the mirror, like that's my own problem too. But yeah, it's often other things that come up. So,
all right, so I look up how to be a better husband, and I get a cowboy for 20 minutes, 500,000 views. I get a biblical Christian with 750,000 views. And then I get, I think this is Christian, a marriage helper channel. So the marriage helper channel has a video on how to be a good husband. Then another biblical one, Dad University, husband, godly husband. That's interesting. As soon as you go from father to husband, it's a lot more biblical.
Interesting, but there was nothing in your search that had kind of a biblical leaning.
I put how to be a husband and how to be a father. But when I did how to be a father, there was no references to Bible, Christianity, anything like that.
Maybe that's kind of how far down the totem pole husband has fallen, that it only relates to religious things now.
Man, isn't that fascinating? So,
yeah.
So the father one, I got popular figures and then eventually got to people I don't know. On the husband one, I don't really recognize any of these people. I recognize Mike Winger because he's an idiot, but everybody else I don't recognize.
Interesting.
So the fatherhood one is actually a topic that people are paying attention to. The husband one apparently is like pretty low. We should do maybe there's got to be a way to like look up Google search popularities, on that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, I think you and I we're in the circle of husband and father, and I feel like if there was just dominant figures out there for producing just great content, we would know about it. But there's no one talking about that. Even the Art of Manliness, I'm sure that is really great content. Um, I think it's also all over the board. When I left it, at least a long time ago, like he was just doing all kinds of content. Nothing. I felt like
Yeah.
it wasn't hyper specific to father or husband.
No, it was very like everything manly. Um, so, okay, so there's a lot of advice on how to be a successful man, which I think the first thing that people think of is just money. Like, men are the provider historically, culturally. Therefore, money is the goal. So we're going to do a bunch of money training, and men are interested in how to make more money, and therefore that topic is thick. And there's a lot of people that are in that space, for better or for worse, that basically say, here's how to get rich quick, here's how to get rich responsibly, money first, then family. Oh no, you can have a family and money at the same time. There's the Dave Ramsey people, there's entrepreneurs. So that's definitely a big topic. Then there's success in general, whatever success means to you. Then there's the party life. So being a husband and being a father compete with the party life. If you're part of that culture, it's direct competition. Like and this goes for women too. If you start having kids, your party life ends. That's how it's perceived. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's largely true. Another one is physically. So especially for women, they tend to get this, but even for men, it's like, I'm going to get the best body I can, the most money I can, so I can attract the perfect wife. And then once you have before you have the perfect wife, you have the perfect girlfriends. Like, you're hunting these girlfriends. All of these things, money, physicality, girlfriends, partying, they all compete with fatherhood and husbandhood. And I see those two things, husbandhood and fatherhood, I see them losing the battle in the competition for young men's attention. They're losing.
I would agree with that. I wouldn't say I have like a huge sample size, but yeah, I think this threads back to what I said earlier, which is just, I'm in the circle that should be talking about fatherhood and husbandhood, and it's not happening, and so, and yeah, I probably talk about uh, money, wealth, entrepreneurship, having fun, going on adventures. None of these things are evil in a silo or anything, but I'm just talking about these other things more than I'm counseling, debating, getting in the arena about fatherhood. So, so yeah, your statement they're losing, I would.
So then here's the question that I think might be able to kick this off in a particular direction. What skills do men need to be good fathers and husbands? And specifically, what skills to be a good husband or father are different than the skills to be a good other thing, like a good businessman or a good partier or successful in your workout routine? Like, what skills are specific to fatherhood and
All those other things, you can kind of compromise relationships a little bit. Like you can kind of play games with it and not have to be humble, not have to be honest, not have to be forthright, not even you don't even technically have to be centered on understanding other people's needs, concerns, objectives. Whereas in fatherhood and in husbandhood, in my opinion, whatever that success looks like is rooted in relationship. I think relationship is powerful in all those other sectors too, incredibly powerful. But I feel like it's the denominator in fatherhood and husbandhood.
So the
Like,
skill would be a relationship skill, and that would be transferable to or applicable to husband and fathers, and not as much as the other ones. So if we were to assume that there is no skill, that is specific to fathers and husbands, then there would be no reason to have any kind of like videos or training or like topics to talk about. Like, if it's the same skill set, then nobody cares. Like, everything's good. But it seems like there would be a skill that is specific. I know in my experience, there definitely is skills that are specific to being a good father, being a good husband. And I think what you're saying is true, that it's a relationship skill. As I think about this, the skills that I was writing down earlier were things like patience, being able to have a conversation without taking things personally, being able to have patience specifically for children, wanting to be with children, like explore the world with children. And I guess now would probably be a good time to include something about myself that I've noticed. When I was 13 or 14, I specifically remember putting goals down on paper about being a father, and specifically about being a father. And it was something I started thinking about a lot at 13, 14. Like, I wanted to have kids. I knew I wasn't going to have kids for a while. And I started taking a lot of notes about the fathers that were around me, and like what I liked and what I didn't like and what I would do differently, to the point where when my first daughter was born and my second was on the way, I literally wrote myself a book. And I typed it out, and it wasn't very long. It was like 20 or 30 pages, but it was basically like all the different things I wanted to remember in my later father days, of like, how would I act in this situation? What would I do with timeouts or grounding or buying cars or gifts on birthdays? Like, all these different things that I had thought so much about, and I didn't want to forget them. So I wrote myself this little booklet. And then unfortunately later, like 10 years after that, I realized that I never really put as much careful thought into being a good husband. I put a lot of thought into being a father, but not into a good husband for some reason. It just wasn't on my radar. Maybe because I thought I was a good husband, and then I realized I wasn't. And I did a bunch of work to try and figure that out. But I think there are things that, if men want to be good fathers or husbands, I think there has to be a list of very specific things that you could present to a young man to start thinking about, for them to be more prepared. So, just winging this, I asked what some of those skills might be. Plenty of general life skills. So here's some skills that get called out as husband specific: communicating and listening, conflict resolution, romance and partnership maintenance, and shared decision making. Relationship skills that you could practice starting at the age of 12, 15, 20, whatever, and start making notes to yourself of like, am I improving in these things? This is how to be a good husband. Am I making progress in these things? And then fatherhood. I like these ones. Patience under pressure. I think that was funny. Like, how do you be a good father? You have to be good under pressure, which, like, normally you think of that as like normally you think of that as like, it's the last couple seconds of the quarter and you're behind by a couple of points, and how are you going to get, like,
Yeah.
people think of like under pressure, but when you have kids, you're under pressure constantly.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Father specific skill: mentoring and teaching, so being able to communicate ideas that are familiar to you and new to them. Emotional availability, playfulness and imagination, and boundary setting. Playfulness and imagination, that's probably a good one too. Like, I have friends that are very into their hobbies, and they have 5-year-old kids that are really into Legos, and they cannot bring themselves to play Legos with their kids because, it's just boring, or they have other things to do or whatever.
I do like the thread the fatherhood is hitting on. This seems different than the husbandhood. The fatherhood seems like it's far more like you're trying to you're trying to guide a life form forward, Whereas, like, I don't feel like I'm doing that when I'm with my spouse, right? I'm not like seeing this as her as like a developing life form. Whereas with a kid, it is a little bit different. I mean, they're often do things you're like, ooh, if that goes on for a while, this is not going to be good for their life. And so you're trying to like facilitate that, you know? So anyway.
No, I think that's true. I mean, at a glance, the husband skill set is basically maintaining the relationship. Like, are you able to effectively maintain the relationship? Because if not, you're not
Yeah.
going to be a husband for very long.
Yeah.
And then the fatherhood one is, are you able to transfer your wisdom? Like,
Yeah.
patience, mentoring, emotional availability, playfulness, boundary. Like, are you able to effectively transfer your wisdom to your kid? Skills that overlap both roles: financial responsibility, time management, household skills like life skills, spiritual and moral leadership. That's one that I didn't write that down, but I was thinking about it earlier. So in our faith tradition, the LDS Church has a pretty strong rubric guideline for helping you be a moral force in your child's life. Like, if you watch me and take notes, I will show you how to be a moral human being, or a spiritual human being. And there's a lot of guys that, if you're not going to church at all, it's very hard. If you're not going to church, and like maybe your neighbor is, or the uncle is, or whatever, and your child's able to see, like, oh, I see a pretty big difference here between, like, my kids do it actually. We have a neighbor who has no problem having my kids over, and I know him pretty well, so I don't have a problem with him going over there. But my kids go over there regularly, and he's like drinking with his buddies while he's working on his truck, kind of thing. And he's outside in the garage, and I'm not worried about it. No, it's never had any issues. And my kids know what's going on. They know that he's drinking, and they'll come back, and they'll be like, "Man, he's over there drinking again." And they can tell, and I don't tell them like people who drink are bad, right? Something that's never come out of my mouth. And I don't tell them anything about like make sure that they're nice to you when they're drinking, like people who drink aren't nice or something like that. But they know, they've picked up that when he and his friends start drinking, they act differently, and my kids don't like it. And so they've picked up on, okay, there's a moral leadership here because those people over there appear to be choosing irresponsible decisions at some point, and then over here they seem to be more responsible, more consistent, more reliable, whatever you want to use. But I think that a lot of guys want to be fathers and don't know how to provide moral leadership. How many times does a guy who doesn't go to church sit down and say, like, okay, why do we not steal? Why is stealing
Yeah.
bad?
Yeah. And there's probably worth discussing and teasing out what helpful habits or routines or rituals you could do to provide moral leadership. I do think, and this ties into something you've said before, is I do think one underpinning to fatherhood and husbandhood is the ability to step outside of yourself and just connect with other people's perspectives and needs. I think that's the same for children and your spouse. Now, what happens after that is very different because, in the childhood experience, it's like you're guiding them along. Whereas with my spouse, I feel like it's different. We're trying to manage things. We're trying to be together and manage the thing we've created, these kids and this house and stuff. So anyway, I just think there is like a commonality, and you've said this before. I think in a different one you said something like, there's a big difference between going to church thinking, what can I provide and give here, versus like, what can I get out of this? And those mentalities have stark differences, in like how they play out in your life. I think it's the same with kids. I think you can have kids and be like, you can come at it from, what am I going to get out of this? Or you can be like, what can I give to the kids? Like, how can I empower them? Or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's probably a really good distinction between the manliness that's commonly taught in our culture versus how to and how that competes directly with how to be a good father and a good husband. There's a few little one-liners here that I thought were pretty good. The difference between masculinity empowerment and preparing to be a father or a husband is that it's not about what makes you look powerful, it's about what makes others safe, stable, and strong because of you. Which again, I mean, it's not in every case, but in a lot of cases, people who are encouraging young men these days and who the young men are paying attention to, it's about power. It's about how to be more powerful as perceived by society. When a lot of times that's a threat to your future wife. You know, your wife isn't looking for somebody who's powerful. Your wife is looking for somebody who's safe and stable and strong.
Which has an element of power too. It's just not, maybe, I don't know, imbalanced or something.
I think the difference would be something like the world teaches to be powerful, which actually can be a threat to your wife. But God would have you be powerful in a way that is not a threat to your wife, that is perfectly safe for your wife.
Yeah, yeah, it's grounded in something like love and humility, which I would say the other version of that power is not grounded in love and humility. It's grounded in something else. It's like it's self-seeking in a way.
Yeah, I think that's true. Here's some more little liners that it popped out I thought was pretty cool. Not just strength for yourself, but strength so you can carry others. Not just wealth for pleasure, but wealth to provide stability for your family. Not just charisma with women, but integrity and patience to love one woman for a lifetime. Become the man your future family needs. Strengthen for service, not just status. Build yourself so you can build them. So these are all like little catchphrases that would kind of pull us away from this, you know, the world wants you to be big and powerful, pull us away from that and towards something that's like prepare to be the best family man you can. And in my, this is now my opinion, you'll be much happier. Like you'll be much better off. Like the guys that aim at the kind of the popular masculinity success and then they miss out on some of the still small, quiet, peaceful family stuff. I think hopefully they never realize what they're missing out on because it would be devastating. Just like, I mean, women have this same problem where they decide that they don't need children, all they need is a career, and then they turn 40, 50, 60, and they're like, okay, I feel way more lonely than I thought I was going to. Men have the same problem where they turn 40, 50, 60, and they realize they have three women in their life that don't really want to be around them because they have children with each of those three women, and those children don't really want to be around them because they're not actually like the father that's present. They're the father that provides money, a little bit of time on the weekends, but is not the safe, stable person that's just the rock in their life. And I think if young men could kind of capture that vision, I think more men would bite into that than we realize.
Yeah, I would assume so too. And probably a big problem is I just don't think there's very many people painting a vivid vision for people to, you know, tinker around with in their head. I mean, I feel like more often than not, I get the vision not through like conversations with people, which again could be my own problem. I can initiate these, but it's through things like movies that have just like an incredible, what I would call an incredible father figure, you know. And I'm like, wow, okay, maybe that's what it could look like. Uh, but even then, I don't know how many movies there are that are doing that, right? That are even showing a father and a husband, but yet maybe the vision isn't too grand when you're watching it, you know?
Yeah, it's such an interesting problem of like because a lot of times what the message the young men will get is something like, you're going to be a provider, so therefore be the provider first, and the woman will come to you. Something like that. Like, I need the job first. I can't have kids unless we own a house. Like, stupid stuff like that. And then there's kind of the opposite view where it's like, I am committed to being a provider. And just because I don't make a bunch of money right now, it doesn't mean anything to me or my wife, who loves me and is committed to me, because I'm committed to being a provider. I'm going to provide. And if that means schooling or hard work or whatever it is, that's what I'm going to do. And I don't think a lot of men are encouraged to bite into that, because what that means is that you approach a woman, like, you're 20 years old and you don't have a super bright career. You're just starting off, but you have the courage to go to a woman and say, I love you. I want you to marry me. And we're going to build this thing together so that I can be the provider that I want to be. And you can have that trust in me that I'm going to do that. Like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to be that person, even though you don't see that right now. Because the men are doing the same thing for the woman. I mean, at least they should be. Where the woman is basically saying, I commit to you to be the wife and the mother that you want me to be, even though you can't see that right now. Like, I don't come with children, but you're putting faith in me that I'm going to be the mother you would like to have for your children, just like I'm putting the faith in you that you're going to be the provider that I would like to have for my children. So the whole idea of I need to have a career, or a career before I have a wife, and a house before I have kids, like, that idea is pretty disgusting.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it's very helpful. I think people can do it for a variety of reasons. Yeah, looking at it, just the raw statement of, like, oh, don't get married or don't have children until, like, I don't know, you got the house, or you got the money, or you got the stability. I know there's some nuance there, and so I want to give it space, but, like, I think at point blank, it's not a great default statement. I don't think that's helping anybody.
Yeah, it's not a good starting place. And I've made that mistake too. So what would be interesting, now that we've kind of had this conversation, is to see in the coming days and weeks if there are more targeted topics where I could sit down and be like, topic number 1, how to be a good father, first step. If you're not a father yet, here's some things you can do to practice. If you are a father, here's some things you can do to practice, and how it might look a little bit different, and have it be concrete and helpful, and then build on that. And maybe I'll go through and look at some of the father husband videos that are on here. But I don't know. What I think is lacking is the practical challenges. So, like, the fitness programs and the business programs they offer for men who want to get in, they're like, do this, save this much money every month and then put it into this. And, like, so there's, like, these actions that you get into. For fitness, it's like, okay, 500 push-ups in the first month, whatever. Like, you set up this plan and there's actions and you're checking off the boxes. So something like that for fatherhood and husbandhood, where it's like, if you want to be father number 1, husband number 1, here's what you do. The first month, you're going to do this 5 times and this 10 times and report back. And then month 2, we're going to have a new assignment. Like that I think could be something super helpful.
I think it can be really helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, but it's like a long journey, and I don't even feel like I'm there. I do think this is a matter of the heart, and so you can't really script it, but it often takes scripts to work your way there. It's like, you got to live it out a little bit before you have, like, the experiential evidence that, like, something's working and it's helpful, and it's, so I feel like sometimes, the heart's not there, but, like, you kind of know you want to be there, and so you're like, okay, give me a script to follow. So I think it could be really helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think of things like the Prager universities and stuff. Wouldn't it be fascinating? Wouldn't it be fascinating if years down the road, probably take me to develop something like this, but we have some kind of like fatherhood certificate that a 20-year-old young man could take. Wouldn't that be crazy? Could take to his girlfriend and say, I want to ask you to marry me. And as part of my proposal, I present to you my certificate of trained fatherhood, where I've gone through these different things and kind of developed the skill set to be a father. Oh, and husband too.
Yeah,
I have a husband certificate.
yeah,
Um, because that's effectively what you're doing when you have the career or the house or whatever it is you think you need to have. First is you're saying, will you please marry me because I make money every year and I have the house. That is my certificate that I am worthy to be your husband and the father of your children.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I do think. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know. You know, try to think of like another realm. Like if you walk into a therapist's office, I feel like a lot of people have an intuition that it doesn't really matter how many certificates you have on the wall in this situation. like it means something, but I don't know if it carries a lot of weight. Whereas like obviously a heart surgeon having the certificate is like, okay, you you've held some needles in your hand, you kind of get it. So yeah, but no, that is interesting, and I do think that there could be. I think it like hypothetically, you could have a Scott University, and there could be some things for this husband or fatherhood certificate. I think that a spouse could look at and go, you have that? Oh, that's really nice to know. Like that you could actually carry, and maybe I don't know what that would be.
Well,
Maybe
in today's world, it has some kind of equivalence in things like Financial Peace University, which is the training that Dave Ramsey does. Even Prager University has these little certificates. And then there's things like the Myers Briggs. Like if you presented a Myers Briggs to a fiance and like talk through it and stuff, like that'd be like, oh, he's an emotionally aware person,
yeah, yeah,
um, or a personality aware person anyway. I mean, there's if you were the fiance, what would you want to require of the person who is asking you to marry them? Right? Like looking back, there's a lot of options. You could be like, well, if I'm going to marry you, we both need to do a DSM-5 personality test and get a professional to sync us up to make sure. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things.
you're kind of sucking the joy out of it, didn't? And the risk.
Well, you're
No, no, I know what you mean, and I agree. It's, but I also hopefully it makes sense where I'm coming from too. Like this is something that systematizing would help, but there's no way to a system would be able to carry it.
yeah,
Whereas like in finance, it's like you could actually follow some financial principles, and it's going to guarantee some financial things in your life,
yeah,
almost.
yeah. But I mean, if you take Financial Peace University, present that, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to do it. And even if
Yes. Yeah.
you do it, it doesn't guarantee that any outcome is going to happen. So like if I had a fatherhood certificate and somebody presented that to their fiance, it would be really sad if the fiance thought something like, oh, because he has a fatherhood certificate, my children will never end up in prison. No, they could still end up in prison. Like it doesn't work like that. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. So thank you for exploring that fantasy with me for a minute. That was fun.
Yeah. I certainly think the subject could be talked about a lot more, and I wish I talked about it a lot more. Um,
I,
you
I
know,
I think I think
you
it
know,
would be talked about more if there was like specific skills that we knew were targeted and that we could be like, okay, how's everybody doing on A and B?
yes, yeah. Do you know Huberman, who's
Yeah.
like in the health arena? I remember him one time. I thought it was just an interesting statement. He's like, or no, was it him? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Somebody said, we shouldn't be asking each other how we're doing. we should be asking each other how we're sleeping. That should be the thing we ask. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. I mean, obviously it's this tension immediately when you hear that of like, what is sleep a metric that's that important, And I feel like I feel the same way about fatherhood and husbandhood, which is that maybe that's what, when I see my dad, husband, neighbor, like I wonder, how far up on the list, should those conversations naturally come up about just being a husband and a father? Because right now, they're not really coming up. Maybe it should be like, hey, how's your marriage? Which I feel like to the general public would be like, really like, whoa, what are you talking about? Don't ask me about that. Or even about, how's your relationship with your kids? What are you doing with your kids? What's working and what's not? Could be.
When was the last time you went to their soccer game?
Yeah, it could be really valuable. So
you remember I sent you guys the video about the guy with the spool of wire? Did you watch that? There's a guy that's sitting there with his spool of wire, and his wife walks up.
Yes.
Like, what are you doing? So I watched that video so many times, and there was a few other videos like that I've hesitated to send to you guys because they're just like, they just weigh on me so heavy.
Wait, why does that one weigh on you?
I don't know, because it just represents something so powerful in every man, of like this vulnerability that goes emasculated, right? Like it's just, he's just ripped to shreds. And another one that gets me is where this guy who's, I don't know him, he's some kind of a marriage therapist of some kind, and he's with this woman, and the woman's got a smile on her face, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to ask you about your marriage. Like, how's your marriage? And she's like, good, yeah, going really good. And he says, oh yeah, is he happy? And she was like, wait, what did you say? And he's like, yeah, I was just asking if your husband's happy. Is he happy? And she's like, normally the question's for me. You're supposed to ask if I'm happy in my marriage. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not asking that. Is your husband happy? And she's just like, and he's like, okay, I think we know the answer. Like, this is not good. And I watched that one several times because it hits hard on how we perceive marriage, which is like, am I getting what I want out of this marriage? Am I getting what I want out of fatherhood?
Yeah.
And that would be the interview question, right? Like, is your wife happy in your marriage? Are your children happy with your fatherhood? Because that helps you reflect on exactly how you're serving rather than being served by the people in your circle.
Yeah. No, I agree. The Wire video, yeah, I would agree. It like pulled on a heartstring, but I didn't really give it a lot of thought after that. I just, the biggest thought I had was a sense of time, because that was like, his comment was just like, I've had this since my 20s or something, whatever, since I was a teenager.
Yeah, that's what you think the video is about for the first few seconds, and then at the end you're like, oh crap, it's about something completely different. But there's been like 3 or 4 videos like that I'll watch, and I watch them a few times because it's pulling at something, that I haven't tapped into very well.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting. If you ever want to talk more about fatherhood, husbandhood, I'm happy to talk about it. It's yeah. I thought you were going to talk a lot more about what is this whole masculinity thing, but I know you said it was related to fatherhood and husbandhood, which I think is more constructive to just talk about those, in my opinion, without trying to tie in like the modern masculine narrative. I just don't think it's that helpful. So.
Well, I think it competes. Those two compete with each other.
Yeah.
All right. Any last words?
No, I'm good. Yeah, it's good talking with you.
Yep. Thanks. We'll see you.
Yeah, we'll see you.